Another great name, Obadiah. How long is the book of Obadiah? How many chapters? 1. How many verses? 21. Do you find Obadiah in your Bibles? It's probably less than a page, right? 21 verses long, possibly written closer to the destruction of the temple. It was in 586 that the temple was destroyed, or it could have been around 400 BC. The destruction of the temple makes sense because what we have here is a lament that's similar to Psalm 137. Psalm 137 is a lament when we were taken into exile. Here we have a similar lament. So it was likely from the same period, from the same event that inspired it. So it could have been spoken in Jerusalem, or because we were now in exile, it could have been, Obadiah could have been written in exile as well. Verses 1 to 14 are God's judgment aimed at Edom. Let's come back to Edom in just a moment. Who is Edom? Who are the Edomites? And then verses 15 to 21 open it up and are directed to all the nations. So first we're going to talk to the Edomites, the people of Edom, and then we're going to open it up to all the nations. The context, so when Jerusalem fell and the temple was destroyed, the people were taken northeast into exile in Babylon. We refer to this as the Babylonian captivity. We were deported from our homeland, taken into exile in Babylon. Many of us went into Babylon in exile. Others of us fled in other directions. For those of us who fled in the direction of modern-day Saudi Arabia, did the people there, the Edomites, did they receive us well, like foreigners? We heard that we were supposed to receive foreigners well. Did they receive us well? They didn't. And so, part of the question is, what's the history there? Do you all remember the story of Jacob? So Jacob was the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. Jacob stole something. What did he steal? Jacob stole his father's blessing. Who did he steal the blessing from? Would you remember this story? Esau was his older brother. So, according to the story, Isaac was old and blind, and it was time for Isaac to give his blessing to his firstborn son, and his son was a hairy son. And so, Mom gets an idea, I'd rather my favorite son, Jacob, get the blessing, so what if we were to dress him up in goat's fur, so that when we put him in front of his father, he'll just talk in a low-pitched voice, and his father will reach out and touch his arm and feel the goat's fur and think that it's Esau. And so Esau won't get the blessing. The blessing will actually go to Jacob. So according to us in the Middle East, when we talked about how it was that we were different from other people, like from the Edomites, Mommy, why don't the Edomites like us? What was the ideological explanation that we had for it? What story did we use to explain why the Edomites didn't like us? Because their ancestor, Esau, really should have gotten Isaac's blessing, but instead, we got it. We got the blessing that should have gone to them. And so that was the way that we explained why it was that we and the Edomites didn't get along. The Edomites later moved westward and settled south of Jerusalem, but that centuries-old conflict is explained in other books of the Bible. So in other books of the Bible, like Genesis and Numbers and the second book of Samuel and the first book of Kings, they're trying to explain, why don't Edomites and Israelites get along? Oh, it actually goes back to this story that we told of Esau and Jacob. Obadiah's anger in verses 10 to 14 seemed pretty fresh, leading us to believe that Obadiah was probably written shortly after the exile, right? So either written here in Jerusalem when the exile was beginning, or written from Babylon once we were deported there. Various parallels, if we had the time to be able to see how it is that Obadiah probably was familiar with Jeremiah, because Obadiah verses 1 to 4 are similar to Jeremiah chapter 49. Obadiah 5, verse 5 to Jeremiah 49:9. Obadiah verse 6, Jeremiah 49:10. Those are too many similarities to think that Obadiah didn't read Jeremiah. Does Obadiah appear in the Christian scriptures? Not really. We don't have the name, the prophet Obadiah, in the New Testament. However, there are various parallels between Obadiah verse 21 and Revelation, though David Zucker in his book says that those parallels are vague and perfunctory, so we're probably wasting our time trying to look for Obadiah in the New Testament. Should we take a look at the last verses of Obadiah? Obadiah verses 12 to 21. Obadiah verse 12, you shall not gloat over your brother or sister in the day of his or her misfortune, nor rejoice over the people of Judah in the day of their destruction. Don't boast just because they're experiencing, having a bad day with their city being destroyed. Verse 13, you should not march through the gates of my people in the day of their disaster, nor gloat over them in their calamity in the day of their disaster, nor seize their wealth in the day of their disaster. You're sort of getting what's happening here? It's talking about the disaster of Judah, the fall of Jerusalem, the fall of the temple in their disaster, the day of their disaster, the day of their disaster, the day of their disaster, repeated over and over and over again. Since we're talking to the people of Edom, verse 14, you should not wait at the crossroads to cut down their fugitives. Imagine that for a moment. Here we were running to escape. Those of us who weren't going into exile, we were running to escape. What were they doing? You shall not wait at the crossroads to cut down, to kill their fugitives, which is what the Edomites were doing. Nor hand over their survivors in the day of their trouble. Now we turn from the words directed to the Edomites to the words directed to all nations. The day of the Lord is near for all nations. As you have done, it will be done to you. Have we heard words like that before? What you do unto others will be done unto you. Your deeds will return upon your own head. Just as you drank on my holy hill, so all the nations will drink continually. They will drink and be as if they had never been. Verse 18, there will be no survivors from Esau. People from Negev will occupy the mountains of Esau. The people of foothills will possess their land. And the company of Israelite exiles in verse 20 will possess the land as far as Zarephath. The exiles from Jerusalem will possess the towns of Negev. Deliverers will go up on Mount Zion to govern the mountains of Esau, and the kingdom will be the Lord's. Got news for you. For those of you who mistreated those fugitives who ran in your direction from Jerusalem, you mistreated them. The Lord's going to do to you what you did to them. The Lord's going to take away your land and give it to the Israelites. 21 verses short, the book of Obadiah.